Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining our first management session of the day on day 3 of the Cloud Communication Summit. We are having a great time. Chris gave us an enormous amount of information. It's funny because you hear stuff like that, and it's stuff that but you have to hear out loud to be able to recognize it. Little jewels, little gems like the same optimizations we're talking about for our clients, we should be doing as MSPs. So to keep that ball rolling, I'm very proud to introduce the 3 pillars of compliance. But before we do so, we're going to have a special message from my buddy Wes Johnson over at Compliance Solutions Inc. Wes, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Ray. How are you this morning, sir?
Good. Why don't you tell us about CSI and what you do for our wonderful partners?
I appreciate it, Ray. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, we've been around about 18 years now, and so we're a telecom tax and compliance partner with, obviously, Orsini and about 500 other clients all around the country. But we have our own tax rating engine that billing companies utilize on a daily basis. But then obviously our main bread and butter is preparing, filing, and remitting all your city, county, state telecom tax returns, your FCC returns, basically anything and everything to keep you compliant. So we're here to take that off your plate so you can focus on growing the business.
Truly white glove type support and service for our partners, and we appreciate you, man. Thank you. So like I said, I have the 3 pillars of compliance, right? Whether it's regulated compliance, talking about your Hipaa compliance, whether it's talking about your taxation and billing compliance, or you're talking about your submission and remittance compliance and making sure your communications and filings are up to date. So we're very proud to have our dais here today. We are going to start off with Mr. Mark Levies of Datagate Innovation America, who helps us on the billing side and integration side. Mark, how you doing, man?
Very, very well, thank you, Ray. Really enjoying the sessions we're having. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we also have Paul Redding from Compliancy Group. Paul has been gracious enough to be on a webinar with us in the past, and and he's just a font of information. Paul, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Ray. Really enjoying the event.
Absolutely. And Mr. Mark Lamert, the man, the myth, the legend from CSI, will be joining us shortly. He's just getting stuff prepared so he can give us the absolute best of information. So we will give him some time. But let's get kicked off. Mark Levies, I know this sounds a little obvious, but billing, isn't all billing the same? Can I take my ConnectWise? Maybe that's a bad example given your background. But can I just take some proposal out of QuickBooks and start billing? Why does billing matter in terms of compliance?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, our favorite saying is get your billing tax compliance right so you can sleep at night. And it's basically a lot to do with what Chris was just talking about in the previous session. It's about having your back-end systems integrated and talking with each other. You've got a lot of information to deal with all the calling data that comes from OITVOIP, and you've got to make sure that it's all processed correctly and quickly, and the billing has got to produce invoices that compare to the big guys like the AT&Ts of the world, that it goes out to your customers correctly and efficiently via email, that it talks with the right compliance companies like Compliance Solutions so they can do their part to get all the taxes filed, and then it passes all the information into your other systems like ConnectWise and QuickBooks and Xero. We differentiate ourselves because we are designed for MSPs. We make sure that we integrate with the solutions that MSPs use. So
that's really traditional solutions can't do it, right? Their traditional solutions can't bill appropriately.
Exactly.
Average tax bill for VoIP, you have 7, 8, 9 lines of different taxes and fees. QuickBooks and the like, they're not made for that. They're not built for that.
Exactly. And even the PSAs, they can't produce telecom bills correctly. They don't have the necessary tax connections. They can't do the call rating. So really, that's what we bring to the picture. We are an integrated component for the MSP, and we're designed to work with all the other components, like the PSA, like the switch, like the the tax compliance from compliance solutions, etc.
And and I'll take a theme that you just mentioned. You mentioned being able to sleep well at night, right? MSPs I talked to about that talked about going VoIP, they say they've avoided VoIP in the past because telecom taxation compliance remains is terrifying. But now with over the last several years, HIPAA, Paul, I'll kick off to you. That heartburn doesn't go away whether you're doing VoIP or not. You still have your that boogeyman in the closet, right? But is that boogeyman that scary when you have the right vendors?
It's funny, right? HIPAA is one of the places where people stumble, right? They get very confused. When you talk about HIPAA compliance, for the most part, people want to immediately jump to IT security. And so the question that, say, like phone vendors get a lot is your platform HIPAA compliant? The reality is no platform, no tool, no stack is HIPAA compliant. You as an organization are or are not compliant. Like you guys use us, for your HIPAA compliance because organizationally, all the soft side's got to be done. It's very much like the other gentleman here. Compliance begins with the business side of it, right? So you're right. If you start by working with somebody like CSI, for example, and you clean up your compliance in terms of taxes, you lower your risk as an organization. Same thing's true with HIPAA. If you have one healthcare client or one business that has healthcare clients, you're in that same bucket with them. So you're right. The boogeyman is out there, but it really is just as simple as working with these other guys. It's like working with us. Get somebody to handle the part you don't want to touch.
And that makes a lot of sense. When I worked on the MSP side, we still have our active MSP clients too, but whenever something new came out, whether it was FINRA, SOX, HIPAA, FERPA, whatever, they have very similar guidelines. They have very similar requirements. And I'm seeing this a lot with HIPAA now, where people are saying, "Oh, well, does this type of business, does that mean I have to be HIPAA compliant? Does this type of business?" And my answer is usually the same. It doesn't matter. Just raise the tide, make sure your practices are good across the board. And then the clients you take on don't really matter because you're good. And then obviously identify the clients, make sure you help them with their compliance. But if you're doing things right, it really doesn't matter, right? You shouldn't be trying to pick and choose which clients are going to be, should make you as an organization be compliant. That's ridiculous. Right.
That's actually a major problem, is that people wait for their customer to come to them and hand them this big stack of paper and they go, "Hey, you're HIPAA compliant," right? It's too late at that point. You as an organization going out there and selling, unless you're going to draw a line and go, "I am not touching anyone on this side of the fence," then you need to do it yourself. You're right.
Absolutely. And, we'll take the opportunity. Mark, I see you've joined. Mark Lemert, thank you for joining us, man. I appreciate you. Speaking of, not being afraid of the boogeyman, we'll call Mark the Dragon Slayer, because when it comes to compliance in telco, it's absolutely the 500-pound dragon. But CSI makes it easier. So, Mark, I'll let you put it in your words. Why is compliance in telco not scary when you do things right?
Well, I think it's a matter of you've got all the professionals that are here, even on this platform, as we're talking to you guys. Have professionals next to you, shoulder to shoulder. It provides a lot of confidence. I've been doing this stuff for 30 plus years. The FCC is not one to mess with, but you don't really have to mess with them because you got Mark. With Datagate and you got Ray and you got a lot of the backup that you didn't have to have before. Back when long distance came into being, when 1984, after Judge Green and the divestiture, you didn't have a whole lot of support. I cut my teeth on the support was being, you had AT&T and Verizon and Sprint. And then the Williams companies came along, and it became Wiltel. They put fiber through their dark fiber, their dark oil and gas lines that weren't operating, and that was your support. And the support was good, but it wasn't anywhere close to what it is, 25 years later. And so it's complex. I'm not gonna lie to you. It is complex, and there's a lot of numbers moving around. And I believe, as somebody said just a few minutes ago, you guys need to, in my opinion, guys and gals, if you can do what's best for you, which is going out and getting customers and serving customers, and that's what you do well. And what we do well is handling the back office for you. And that gives you some confidence there. I was always asked, I've been in business now for my own company for about 20 years or whatever. And some people always come up and say, well, why'd you go into business? Why'd you go into business? And, it's like any entrepreneur, you want to take a risk, you want to do whatever. But I went into business because I wanted to service the customer. I wanted to take all of this nebulous word called taxes, and I wanted to, I wanted to make it clear. And so I have a flyer out there that I can provide that basically takes what you're going to bill through Datagate, and we split it into 3 categories. Legislative branch taxes. Remember now, with all the rioting and all the things going on, it's clear that the governors and the city mayors and all that, they have a role to play. And then, President Trump has a role to play. So you have taxes which are done at the county, city, ballpark level, dog catcher level, 911, a lot of stuff there. That's one part of it. And then the second part is going to be your executive branch surcharges. And what's an executive branch? Well, that's the Federal Communications Commission. They're similar to how the U.S. Treasury is. You have the FCC. And so the U.S. Treasury, you have an entity called the IRS. And with the FCC, you have an entity called USAC. And so that's the federal USF. And so you got to look and see what are those items that go into that category. And then there's another category called company imposed charges. And with that, that's a little bit more of the wild, wild west. You can recover what you need to recover. So as you know more information, it gives you more confidence to do what you're doing. And I hope everybody in the audience sees that the folks on this panel are, they're the best of the best. And we're going to keep you in compliance, and we're going to keep you billing correctly. And if we keep the flow rolling, you're gonna do well and make a lot of money and stay out of a lot of trouble and go out and do your best thing, which is service your customer.
And I think that's the goal of the game, right? You want to be able to sleep well at night. You want to be able to make sure you're servicing your customer properly, and you want to make sure you're doing it correctly, because they want to sleep well too, right? Because people don't realize you can get shut down, and the smaller you are, you can get shut down much more easily. It just takes one smack from the FCC, Department of Revenue, HHS. It just takes one little smack, and most businesses are done. So that's what it's about. Paul, I want to kick over to you. It's not, one of the things that I think is probably the scariest part of all of this is it's not even about being compliant today. Being compliant today doesn't mean you're compliant tomorrow, because things change. I know Mark Lemur does an awesome job of communicating changes month after month with those newsletters. Ohio did this, Washington State did that. Do we find the same frequency of changes when it comes to HIPAA as far as what's allowed, what's not?
That's a great question for right now. If you take a look at what happened right after COVID hit, in March, the president basically went on TV and made this very vague statement that HIPAA was being lightened for telehealth. Our phones blew up for 3 weeks. Like, our salespeople couldn't make outbound calls because everybody calls going, so HIPAA's suspended? There's no more HIPAA? There's no more HIPAA? Yeah, things change very fast. The federal government just shelled out $6 trillion. They're about to shell out more. They're going to want some of this stuff back. They don't do a great job of telling you when they pull back rules. So, for example, right now, you can use almost any video platform out there for telehealth. Nobody knows when that's going to stop. They did it for COVID. They're going to create just as vague of an announcement when it's over. And if you're out there working, your clients are using the wrong thing, all of a sudden what was okay yesterday is now, $1 million fine today. So yeah, we at Compliance Group, one of the things we try to teach both, our VAR and MSP partners and our direct clients is that what compliance is like a marathon with no finish line. You don't lose the race as long as you keep running. Right? But you better be able to show that yesterday my foot was there, today it's here, and tomorrow it's going to be right there. As long as you stay on that path, you'll be okay.
Yeah, that's a marathon without a finish line. I think I'm gonna quote that from now on. I love that. So, before I move over to Mark Levy's, let me ask you one more question. So the president says we're lightening it. Everybody's using absolutely anything for telehealth, even though there always have been HIPAA compliant telehealth solutions.
Of course.
They just, they didn't come to light until very recently. Has there been any idea of when things are going to retighten, or is this even an official thing? Has there been any announcement from HHS saying it's okay, use Zoom, or are we just kind of playing in the gray area?
They did. HHS came out and made an announcement. What they lightened up for the most part was around billing issues, right? So while everybody called us thinking that HIPAA was over, they just made it easier to use doctors across state lines and for them to get paid through Medicare. The only thing that they really did is eliminate temporarily, and it's very clear it's temporary, the requirement for your telehealth provider to sign a business associate agreement. So Zoom is a great example, right? They have a cheap version and an expensive version. The expensive version has always been okay for healthcare. The cheap version is not, because they don't end-to-end encrypt. They don't do the same protection around the sessions. So one of the things I tell everybody, it doesn't matter when this thing is going to end. Don't do this. Just because you can does not mean you should. You're still going to have a breach if you're using, FaceTime to do telehealth. It is not a secure, safe way to transact business. So we are strongly recommending that none of our clients go down what we see as an extremely slippery path.
Yeah, and that's the value of bringing in the right vendors, right? It's, you can be a master at certain subjects that matters, but it's hard to be a master of everything. Keep on top of everybody. I can't even imagine how you guys keep on top of it. Mark Lovey's, we get kind of in telco, funny enough, we kind of get a free pass when it comes to the taxation side of it, because we have these and we won't get into which ones, but we have these automated rating engines that, as long as the product catalog is identified appropriately, coded appropriately, we're not doing the math. We're not doing it by hand, right? We're just using the engine to do the math for us and figure the things out. Because I imagine if the FCC or anybody else came out, USAC came out, or any of the agencies came out and said, we're doing fuzzy business, we're going to lower the thresholds for a few months at a time, it would kind of break us if we all had to do it individually, right? That's where these tax engines come into play.
Absolutely. And we like to use the phrase "staying in our lane," and so we're very clear about what we do, and we work closely with our partners, like OITVOIP, like Compliance Solutions, and so our billing solutions plugged into the tax engines, and sometimes. Our clients are doing their billing and they'll say, hey, the taxes look a bit different to last month. What's happened? And it's just so automatic because we've got the experts plugged into the system. Someone calls us and says, hey, why are my taxes different? I say, ring Mark and his team at Compliance Solutions, and they're across all of that. They're experts at it, and it's all automatic. And staying in our lane means that we respect what other people do, what they add to the whole process, and we respect. ConnectWise is a great PSA package, for example, and we can augment and add to that value. We Compliance Solutions are a fantastic expert at looking after your tax and compliance, and we work nicely with them. We work nicely with QuickBooks and Xero, and so it's really our strategy: stay in our lane. What we want to do is be the best billing package, with nice modern interfaces that we can get those bills out as quickly and accurately as possible, and let the bill look just like the type of bills that come out of the big guys like AT&T and Verizon. So your bills as an MSP are right up there, and the billing is very important. We see clients often pick and choose where they buy their telecom services from, just based on the quality of the billing, and so that's our lane that we stay in, and that's what we focus on.
So Mark Lamert, I just said something and immediately regretted saying it. I asked Mark Levy's, could you imagine if they changed their mind from one month to the next? But then I look back at your newsletters month after month, and every agency, you have something changed from nearly, from so many agencies from one month to the next. What is it like to keep track of something like that because you guys service all of the U.S. and you do Canada as well, right?
Yeah, and we actually handle approximately 75 other countries as well. So
I can't imagine that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, we're adding countries every month. In fact, I probably need to update you with exactly where we're at with that. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of like I'll use an analogy. It's like a football field, and we've got two end zones. And what happens is there's supposed to be 100 yards between the two end zones, but there's really not sometimes 100 yards. They're like touching each other. It's almost like they fold up and they touch, the goalposts touch each other, because you're dealing with two sides of this whole thing. One side to start out with is billing and tax calculations. The other side is audit defense. Now, audit defense touches back into the tax calculations because that's what an auditor does. They look at a bill, and now the question comes in and says, okay, what's everything else on the 100-yard football field? Well, there's tax exemption forms. And then they have other things going on, like with Paul in the compliance group, with Hipaa and things of that nature. And those are just another analogy. And so when we pull this all together, it is, to a certain extent, stay in your lane. And it's also a free-for-all sometimes when you get all of these changes. When they all come in, you realize, between the United States and Canada alone, forget about Mexico and these other 75 countries we're doing for calculation systems, which again, I'm going to update Mark and others on those. You're looking at between 20 and 30,000 different tax jurisdictions. And I alluded to this a few minutes ago. With all these riots going on and all that, all of a sudden the mayor of Portland says, I don't want somebody in my city. I don't want the feds in my city. And then, the state says, no, I don't want the feds in my state, or I do want my feds in my state. And you got others. And so what you're seeing all these little cities and townships and hamlets, and everybody's taking their little piece part. Now, when you think of all those little piece parts, those are actually little taxing districts. And where is the tangible tax happening? And so in voice over IP, we can talk about a couple little concepts here, maybe, that where's the primary place of use? Where's the tangible tax? Where's the telecom tax happening? And it's, where is the police, fire, and ambulance going to show up when you call 911? Yeah, that's assuming that somebody doesn't defund the police, okay? But the fact of the matter is that's, where do you want the police, fire, and ambulance to show up? And that is actually your primary place of use. And in essence, you may have, a company, a client or a company of yours that is in 3 jurisdictions: Valdosta, Georgia, Lake Park, Florida, and Jacksonville, Florida. Well, you actually have 3 911 taxes, one for each location, because that's in accordance with the FCC Enforcement Bureau. Basically, you have to have an enhanced 911 system out there. But you think about that and you say, well, how do you keep track of these 20,000 things? It's unfortunately, it's 365 days a year. You just have to stay on top of it. Monitoring, calling, we do, approximately 80,000 tax returns a month. Okay. Well, those 80,000 tax returns a month, we get to touch base with pretty much all of these agencies. And you realize, well, oh gosh, this isn't very hard because you're just filing things online. Well, yeah, the governor of the state of Florida has plenty of money to hire 15 IT folks to make sure that you can file your Florida sales tax and Florida communication service tax online. Guess what? The poor schlubs in Longwood, Florida, in all these cities all over the country, and all the counties and all over the country, other than maybe Cook County in Illinois, it's Chicago basically, Los Angeles County, and some other ones, they don't have the money to invest in IT folks to make sure they have an online system. So you're stuck with filing these things paper. You're filing paper, you're cutting paper checks, everything's scanned in. We got a nice library where you can see everything, and we'll keep track of everything going there, but it's keeping track of all that. So Ray's question was, well, how do you keep track of all that type? It's returns, it's doing audits, tax audits. We have to monitor everything with our tax rating engine. We're one of the companies that have everything pulled together. You don't have to go to 3 different companies and choke 3 throats to figure out, oh, I got a compliance company that actually does a return, and then I got another company that actually does tax calculations, and I got another company that does audits and all that type of stuff. So we're a big company. So the great thing, Ray, on your question, we actually have several different departments that work together, team, to keep it all current.
So, and that brings up a good point, moving over to ecosystem, right? Moving over to ancillary services that or ancillary departments that kind of help each other out, communicate effectively. Mark Levy's automation, integration, ecosystem, right? Because that's exactly what you're doing. You're taking DataGate, you're combining with QuickBooks or Xero, you're combining with ConnectWise, you're combining with OneBill. I'm sorry, not OneBill. You're combining Connect Booster. Thank you. Combining with Connect Booster. So you have this automation, this clean workflow. We're not fat fingering. We're not swivel chairing. We're not double typing. We're having this information flow everywhere, right? Mark has rated the products. It's DataGate is billing appropriately for the catalog using the tax engine to rate everything. It's flowing into QuickBooks. It's flowing into ConnectWise. How important is that automation in terms of not missing something? Because I think the risk of missing something is so high, right?
Absolutely.
So how important is it to have that automation, that ecosystem?
I mean, it's critically important, and really all these systems need to talk to each other. That's our belief. We listen to our MSP clients. They tell us the solutions they want to work with. We make sure that those solutions will plug in and receive data. And so that you're absolutely right. That's why we work with ConnectWise and why we read ConnectWise data. We minimize keystrokes, because keystrokes means errors. People make mistakes. It ties up time. And I think Chris articulated it beautifully in the previous session. The need for streamlining your automation, back-end processes as an MSP, because MSPs spend so much time automating everybody else's processes, but really, have your own processes automated so that you can maximize your investment in the forward-facing part of your business, getting new deals, selling, serving your customers. And in the back end, your systems should all be plugged into each other. You mentioned Connect Booster, for payment collections, compliance solutions, or tax compliance, returns, etc. You've got ConnectWise, keeping track of all that information. It's so important that it all plugs in together like one big system and works for you in an automatic way. It's not going to drag resources out of your business. And in fact, we're going to demonstrate this at 2:30 at our booth today. 2:30, DataGate is demonstrating how things all work together. So please join us for that, everybody. But sorry about the plug. But,
no, I'm glad you did, because we've been putting out in the apps and stuff between the sessions. All the vendors are doing their demos. They're doing 15-minute demos to respect your time and give you time to go see everybody else. And it's funny because I watched you yesterday and you did this demo on such a complex platform in such a short amount of time. There's a saying that's often misquoted, misattributed to Einstein, saying, if you can't explain it easily enough, you don't know it well enough, right? He didn't say that, but he gets attributed to it.
That's right.
But it was truly impressive. I mean, for something we take hours to train people on, you were able to show off in 15 minutes, obviously condensed, but it truly goes to show the benefit and the beauty of automation and what the platform can allow. So Paul, I am going to I'm the bar automation, ecosystem. Does that exist for compliance? I mean, you have your processes, you have your procedures, which has near and dear to my heart. But is there any automation now or in the future for HIPAA compliance?
What we've done really is build a repeatable system. It's difficult to automate around human behavior, and there's a lot of managing the individuals there that goes into it. So it's really about centralizing, right? It's one of the things that we've done, I think, that helps the community as a whole, is there's like 9,000 different versions of an assessment, right? Nobody really knows what questions to ask. Are we talking about a risk assessment? Are we talking about a HIPAA risk assessment? We're a NIST risk assessment. What we have done, honestly, is we've created a place where the work that you're doing can be applied towards the compliance standards. So an example would be, what is a help desk ticket for an MSP may be a meaningful breach for your client? How do you translate what you're working on into the legalese to report out to these, organizations like OCR, Office of Civil Rights, Health and Human Services? That's what we've done, is create, it's not so much an automated system, but a trackable, I call it like QuickBooks for HIPAA compliance. We're talking a lot about the financial piece of this. If you didn't have a tool like a QuickBooks, right, how would you ever be able to take in the complexity of your overall financial organization and turn it back over to the IRS if you're audited? It's impossible, right? They're never going to look at your spreadsheets. They're never going to dig through all your work. They're not, I hate to say this, if you're an MSP and your client gets breached and audited, nobody wants to see your tickets. Nobody wants to look at your project history. What they're looking for is something that's been put into a single reporting location. So for us, it's less about the automation of it and more about the streamlining of the collection of that data, the processing of the work into a digestible format. And it's critical. Otherwise, I'll throw this out there. The failure rate under a HIPAA audit is 94%. Shameless plug for us. Using our methodology, we've been here over 15 years. If you get our seal of compliance, we have never, ever had a client fail a HIPAA audit. We defend you, and if you use our process, we can show good faith effort. It's not necessarily automation. It's like I flunked Algebra 2. It's like the only class I failed in high school. The answers were right. I couldn't show my work. We'll show your work for you. That's what it's about.
So, and I'm glad you said it, because if you didn't, I was about the, the 100% success rate, right? And so, Mark touched on it a little bit, you touched on it as well. It's less about having the right policies, procedures, and everything in place is absolutely important. The audit defense saying, no, we can prove we did what we said we were doing. That's equally important, if not more important, in my opinion. I've been, I own several businesses. I have been audited by the IRS. That's not fun. And even when you walk away and owe nothing, you still dedicated weeks, months, if not sometimes years to that audit of pulling everything back out to show them that you did things right. And I will say that question was was a little bit of a softball, because, people inaccurately assume compliance is just a set of turn these settings on, turn these settings off when it comes to HIPAA, and you're good. And unlike VoIP, as long as Mark has categorized everything appropriately and it's being rated appropriately, we're good. Mark does his thing, but Mark Lemert does his thing. But with HIPAA, it's more consultative. It's more conversations to make sure policies, procedures, right? It's much less just check boxes.
No, yeah, compliance in terms of HIPAA, NIST, or CMMC that's coming down the pipes, New York Shield Act, these are administrative. They start with the business itself. It begins inside your organization. Well, if you don't address the human factor, you will fail your audit. It's impossible not to.
Have you seen audits either ramp up or slow down during COVID at all?
They definitely haven't slowed down. We just had a fine issued, I think, day before yesterday, $1.5 million for a single stolen laptop. So no, over the last 5 years, enforcement's up over 400%. And what we're actually seeing, if there's any trend, is smaller and smaller businesses being fined. The days when for a long time they weren't going after the small businesses are over. My theory, and kind of one of the running theories behind it, is that when all the fines were $6 million levied against eClinical Works or somebody, then the small guy really didn't take this seriously. And even if I tell you you're a doctor, I'm going to hit you with a $6 million fine, what's your answer? Oh, well, I'm going to go out of business. I'm closed. Done. Now they're leveling $300,000, $400,000 fines, just enough to really damage you permanently, but not enough to legitimately maybe completely kill your business. So it's punitive to the point of being destructive without being decimating. That's worse.
Yeah, no, it's worse. And that's what I was saying in the beginning. Most of these companies, you get some kind of fine, unless you're unless you're over a $5 million, $10 million MSP, you get hit with one of these couple $100,000 fines, you're done. Yeah, that's the end of the game. And I'll kick it over to Mark Lemert. One of those things, two-sided question. One, I'd like to see, when it comes to fines, you have so many agencies that can leverage fines against your businesses. What's the most egregious you've ever seen? Because there's a line between punitive and, like Paul said, decimating, right? And two, we hear all the time, oh, I'm not big enough. None of the agencies really care about me yet. I'm not generating enough revenue, so I'm not a target. Is that true, or is that absolute poppycock to keep this PG-13?
Well, it's poppycock. This whole thing of with the FCC, everybody wants to talk about de minimis. Oh, I'm de minimis, which means that, if you have you owe less than $10,000, that supposedly you're not going to have to pay into Federal Universal Service Fund. Well, the truth of the matter is you're going to pay somebody, whether you pay Ray because you're below the 10,000, he's going to bill you for the federal USF, or you're going to be paying directly into the government, into USAC. So there's no love loss for the government for a small thing. There's no chicken in every pot and car in every garage thing. You guys have to go out there and earn it, and you will. And the great thing about it is that you're going to feel wonderful when you do, because you've done what you need to do. You service the customer. It's one of the greatest feelings you've ever had. And so I kind of want to make sure that you guys no one gets too far down into all of the down and dirty and punitive, because yes, that happens. And yes, it's true. I'm going to answer the question truthfully and candidly. Yes, there's the devil out there with the pitchfork. Okay. But there's a lot of great stuff that can happen and that you're going to do. And it's the old thing, extraordinary people do ordinary people do extraordinary things, and they make this country work. And you're the ones who've been the stars during COVID. While you can't go meet people, the communication systems have never fallen down. We have a full-time engineer in compliance solutions, and we've been helping people make sure they get all their call paths and their extended things. It's called the Mother's Day scenario, where everybody calls everybody at one time, and all of a sudden you have disconnected circuits because it's overloaded. Well, Ray and the team have done a great job to make sure that doesn't happen. You've got a really good team here that really forthrightly looks out there. A couple minutes ago, we were talking about integration. And a lot of times, sometimes you can look and say, okay, well, the Mississippi River flows from Minnesota down to the Gulf of Mexico and always flows from north to south. And that's true. But you know what? When you throw customers in there, sometimes it backs up a little bit. So that's when you need to have integration. Okay, you don't always have to have integration when everything's going smooth. If you're going down I-95, 85 miles an hour, it's what happens when there's an accident. You have to do some better driving type deal. So here's the thing: your customer is going to come back to you and surprise you with two things, and I can guarantee it's going to happen. One is they're going to pop off and say, "We don't owe this, and this should not. We've been overbilled for whatever." Not because of Mark Levy did anything wrong with Datagate, but you guys have to realize you're serving the customer, and sometimes you have to tell the customer, okay, customer, technically you're not right, but really you are right. We're going to go ahead and give you a credit for $500 or $200, whatever it is. Well, guess what? That customer paid taxes on that $200. So now we have to make sure that we have to credit back their taxes. Okay. So that's when you need a team, what you're looking at, to make sure that happens integration-wise. Very simple. So if you can calculate positive taxes, you can calculate negative taxes. Okay. So all we do is put a negative in that $200, and now we net the taxes for next month. So typically what you're going to have is you're going to have a credit file every month that's going to come through, and we're going to have positive charges and we're going to have some negative charges. As one of my great inspirational friends 35 years ago or 30 years ago told me, Mark, hey guys, if you can swim in 8 feet of water, you can swim in 8,000 feet of water, assuming there's not waves and tidal waves and all that. But if you can win, so when you think you guys are come to the point, and I'm trying to talk to the attendees here, when you think you're overloaded and all that, you're not overloaded. Take a step back, count to 20 or something, and say, how am I going to skin this cat? There's another way to skin this cat. But when a customer comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to leave you unless you give me that $200 credit. Well, guess what? You know what? Ray and Paul and Mark and I, we're ready to go ahead and help you out, make sure that happens. And that customer's not going to be impressed, and they're going to be with you for a couple of years, and they're going to tell their friends, hey, you know what? These guys did a damn good job. Pardon my French. They did a great job, because you know what? That's what you need. If everything's going perfectly right in your life, A to Z all the time. Hey, what did Vince Lombardi say? The coach of the Green Bay Packers. It's not about how many times you get knocked down in life. It's how many times you get up. Okay. So it's that old statement we just heard a few minutes ago, which is a great analogy. It's like doing a marathon without ever finding a finish line. And so that's what you need to do. Now, the thing. I told you the first thing is the customer's going to say, hey, they shouldn't be billed something and whatever. The second thing is that they're going to come to you and say, hey, I got a customer who gave me a tax exemption certificate. And you say, okay, what's the tax exemption certificate? Well, I'm a 501c3. Okay, so you're a church or something like that, or a synagogue or a mosque or whatever. So you say, okay, well, the customer thinks that they should be exempt from everything. Well, they're exempt from what the IRS does, which is federal excise tax, and they're exempt from corporate income taxes. Okay, if they're a church or a church or a synagogue, but they're not exempt from Florida sales taxes and Florida communication service taxes. Now, they may give you an exemption certificate and say, yeah, we're also exempt from the Florida sales taxes or whatever. So one of the things that's going to come to you at some point, you're going to say, gosh, I should have thought about this. They handed this to me 30 days later or 60 days later. Now I got to go back to Mark Lovey and say, Mark, these guys are exempt from taxes. I need you to make sure you put your tax codes in there correctly to make sure that we don't bill these guys anymore. And that's fine. We don't bill them anymore. But what about the month that you did bill them? So now we have to have integration to make sure that all of us can help you with doing that. So you got a team approach here for all the attendees that are listening. You have a really team approach, and that's where integration comes when things don't always go right. And since everybody's living, everybody's breathing, we're not. There's things that are going to happen, and the customer's not always going to. A customer may have woken up on the wrong side of the bed that morning. And things are not going real well, and they take the anger out on you. So we're here to help you. We're as a team here to defend you and to help you and to be there when things go great, wonderful. But when things don't go great, we're probably going to be a little bit more of your help in the day.
Absolutely. No, and I appreciate that. Just to answer some of the questions in the chat, about tractors being tax exempt. I'm not sure if that's a telco taxation question or a compliance taxation question. You should visit all three. You should visit them in their booths, and they'll talk to you about tractors, Kelvin, so you'll be good. And then we'll host another session afterward. Seriously, though, Lisa asked a question, and I want to do this quickly because I have some other questions. Paul kind of jumped the shark answering in chat, and I appreciate you, Paul. Thank you, dude. We hear it all the time. You hear a doctor or medical client saying, I'm exempt from HIPAA. It doesn't apply to me. Please answer that. I don't want to say the words I want to say. Please answer that in your words.
I told Lisa, I don't know what to say to that. If you're a medical provider, if you're a covered entity and you don't think this applies to you, you didn't pay attention in medical school. Like they start teaching you this stuff when you're literally in school. The one that we run into more often are the business associates that don't think it applies to them. I run into lawyers all the time that think they don't get it. I'll tell you this one, guys. If a lawyer is under the HIPAA law, so is every medical provider you're ever going to touch. And just to kind of flesh that out so everybody understands why I mean that about lawyers, think about this. If you do any form of medical malpractice law at all, any kind of insurance law, anybody's hurt, or you're talking about like a wreck, right? Any of that record that comes to you, it's all protected health information. And your insurance company as an attorney is telling you you have to comply with the law or they won't pay. So everybody out there, again, I'm going to repeat this. Not only does it apply to your medical clients, but if that's your customer saying that to you, they're under HIPAA and so are you. You're obligated to understand your own responsibilities out there. It is a scary world.
Absolutely. And so we've addressed it's a scary world. We've addressed the dragon slayers and those that take care of the boogeymen. But one of the things we talk about all these complexities, but I want to talk about getting started, right? Because if you haven't gone down the path of getting HIPAA compliant, if these sessions have hopefully opened your eyes and you've said, okay, well, maybe what I thought I was safe with, I'm not, I need to get the right things in place. Let's talk about timelines, right? I will start with Mark Lovey's just because I think I know what the answer is going to be. But when somebody says, I want to start doing these things and I've selected the right compliance vendor, hopefully CSI, but, I've selected the right compliance vendor, they need to get their billing going and their products going. What process? Is this a 6-year process? Is this a 20-year process? What is this?
So firstly, they should engage Compliance Solutions and DataGate at the same time. and they can organize that through you, obviously. And because we both have parallel work to do, tax mapping is probably the first thing, and I'm sure Mark would have more to say on that, but that's where we identify what's being sold and put the correct codes onto the products to make sure the tax engine will work correctly, and including training, getting it all working and integrations all plugging in so all the data's flowing around. Will take about 4 to 6 weeks typically, and a lot of that's the training, but at the same time, Compliance Solutions will be doing their part as well. So yeah,
and we always talk about that 30-day sign to sell. I will be a little pitchy here. We talk about our 30-day sign to sell.
Yep.
And it's because we include all of that, right? We have our pre-mapped tax items. We have our training set ready to go. We have our integration partners that we know, hey, you're going to get set up with Mark. You're going to get set up with Mark. You're going to get set up with, OITVOIP. These things are going to happen. You're going to go, and you're going to start selling. You're going to get business. You're going to get going.
Exactly.
Mark Lemert, you have, and it's funny because the number of things you have to be concerned with, and I say Mark has a giant team. It's not like it's just Mark. We get to be the faces, but we're all the result of our teams behind us, right? So realize when Mark's speaking, both Marks and Paul, when they're speaking, they're talking about their teams. But Mark Lemert, there's so many things to get into play. And one of the things that always amazed me is I can send partners over to you, and I'm always rushing the timelines, and I don't have to worry about with you guys because you just get them up and running quickly, right? What's the expectation from Mark, we're ready to go, to when things are in place and they can bill safely?
Oh, I think it's actually, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, but I don't want people to rely on this necessarily. We can get you going within a day. Okay. We can get you registered and all the different things. If you want to be incorporated, we can incorporate you or set you up as an LLC. So we're talking about the Secretary of State. We're talking about the Department of Revenue, and we're talking about the FCC and the Public Service Commission. So there is a lot of things that have to be onboarded. We don't charge any onboarding fees. There's no big fee. There's no big deal. We invest in the relationship with you guys. The good thing you said this, Ray. We have 65 plus people. I just hired one in Los Angeles, California this morning, and has a lot of experience in all types of areas. But we actually put together a registration team just about 4 or 5 months ago, because we are getting so many new clients coming on that it was kind of like, if you look at this, stay in your lane thing, and you got 3 lanes on I-90. We were having so many things coming on in the entrance ramp. And so it was like that far right lane, man, people were having a tough time going, 65 miles an hour over there. And so what we were doing is we set up a whole new department to handle all that. And I've got 5 concurrent teams that work right when you sign the contract. Okay, so from a legal perspective, setting things up, getting your FEIN if that's what you want. We do corporate income tax, we do property tax, so we can set you up there. We handle the registrations to make sure you're tax exempt, and then we actually get you set for basically handling your remittances. We have a FCC team to register it there, and then we're looking at a public utility team that has to register in the states sometimes. So there's quite a few things that have to happen, especially here at Compliance Solutions, related to making sure we're dealing with all different parts of the government. And I guess, in an indirect way, I'm going to give you a little bit of a civics lesson, because we're dealing with all these different parts of the government.
A quick one, because we got 5 minutes left.
Yeah, 9th grade civics, isn't there anymore. But so anyhow, but we fan the flames, and we have these 65 people who are honed in on doing monthly recurring sales taxes and corporate income taxes and property taxes and all that. And then when it comes to registration times, we fan them out, kind of like you'd see an eagle fan his wings, and we handle all the registrations right off the bat.
And that's truly amazing. I mean, I'm not trying to make this a sales pitch, but the truth of the matter is, when we're ready to expand to another state or another country, because those plans are in the works, it's a quick email to Mark, and Mark says, okay, no problem. Here's some forms. Talk to this person. They're going to take care of you. And we go. We've removed the We know our business process now. We don't have to worry about, oh, it's another state and we have to take care of this. We don't. We just email CSI, they take care of it. And, we're good. And I love that. Paul, it looks like you're going to be the last one here. I know you're not going to say one day. What does the timeline look like when, MSP, and something we should point out, for an MSP to work with compliancy group, the MSP has to be compliant themselves before they can start selling to others, right? This is what Chris Blackman talked about. You're going to do what you preach. It's not going to be one or the other. So I imagine that adds a little timeline. Paul, what does that timeline look like?
Well, you are correct. It begins with you as your organization getting HIPAA compliant. The reason being is very straightforward. We recommend that our direct clients use the service providers in our community. I can't recommend somebody that's not HIPAA compliant to a medical group because I'm putting them at risk. Everybody goes through the same process, though. We've got it down. It's about 10 hours of commitment on the customer's part. You're going to meet. We have coaches. So I used the QuickBooks analogy earlier. If the tool itself is like QuickBooks, our coaches are like bookkeepers. So we assign you a human being. They're going to work with you in about 3 meetings. Each meeting's about an hour long. They're going to go through all the audits and prep that you have to do. We provide policies and procedures, the training, all that stuff happens under the direction of the coach. And in between each session, you got an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of homework. Our goal is, again, that one member of your organization is going to spend a little under 10 hours to get compliant. Now, no, that's not all in one day, right? Takes place. Usually it's about 2 weeks. Our goal for anybody is 2 to 3 weeks. If you go beyond that, then, somebody's calling your coach to ask why the foot dragging is happening.
Yeah. And that's just a function of all the conversations and the planning that has to have. There's a lot more thinking that comes, it's a lot more hands-on, but they guide you through every step of it. I mean, you guys you call them what, coaches? I mean, I think was the term. Yeah. You have HIPAA coaches. I mean, I love that. Whereas, with Mark and Mark, with Mark Lovey's on the DataGate side, we're doing the training. We're taking care of them because they've trained us. On the CSI side, just say, Mark, go here, and they go, right. And it's awesome. It's but either way, at the end of the day, you have the tools you need to be compliant. With that, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and the session will kill itself at 12:30. So I want to thank you guys once again, Mark Lovey's, Mark Lemert, Paul Redding. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. You guys are a wealth of information. Guys, please go visit a booth. It is much less scary than what you think it is. I'm genuinely surprised at the lack of questions that we had in the chat today. And I think Lisa and Kelly and Kelvin and Joe for jumping in to add information. Because compliance is the single number one question we get the most when we're pitching to new potential white label partners or to other MSPs. So the information's out there, the tools are out there, the help is out there. Go talk to these guys. Also, we have demos coming up at 12:30 on the dot. TrueGrid is going to be announcing some cool stuff. I don't want to say what it is. Go visit them. 12:30, they'll do a 15-minute demo. And at 1:15 to 1:30, Eureka Process is going to be showing you a behind-the-scenes tour. Very, very cool stuff. Guys, thanks again. I look forward to talking in the future, and have a great day.